Episode 1: The Italian Whisper. Learning patience in Rome's crowded street. Have you ever stood in a place so chaotic, so maddeningly alive, that it forces you to confront the very thing you lack the most? That was Rome for me. A city that doesn't rush for anyone, no matter how much you think you deserve its time. My trip to Rome wasn't just a journey to a city, it was a lesson in the one thing I didn't know I needed: patience. But patience, I learned, wasn't what I thought it was. And if you've ever felt frustrated by life not moving at your pace, then this story might resonate with you too. It was my first morning in Rome, and I had already made the classic tourist mistake, cramming too much into one day. My plan was ambitious, to say the least: see the Colosseum, toss a coin into the Trevi Fountain, grab a famous Roman espresso, visit the Vatican, and somehow catch the sunset from the Spanish Steps. The problem? Rome didn't care about my schedule. As I walked through the bustling streets, I quickly learned that Rome has its own rhythm. Scooters zipped past me, their riders shouting greetings to each other. Elderly women stood in doorways, chatting like they had all the time in the world. Tourists clogged the sidewalks, snapping photos and trying to decipher maps. I, on the other hand, was weaving through the crowd like a man on a mission. I didn't just want to see Rome, I wanted to conquer it. But Rome, as I soon discovered, isn't a city you conquer. It's a city you surrender to. And surrendering wasn't exactly my strong suit. By the time I reached the Trevi Fountain, I was a mess. Sweaty, annoyed, and already behind schedule. I could barely appreciate the fountain's beauty because all I could see were the crowds. Hundreds of people jostled for the perfect photo, their voices blending into a chaotic hum. That's when I noticed him. An elderly man sat on a stone bench near the fountain, sketching quietly. He was completely still, utterly unbothered by the noise and commotion around him. It was like he existed in a bubble of calm, and for some reason I couldn't take my eyes. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to him. Maybe it was the contrast between his calm and my chaos, or maybe it was just curiosity. Either way, I found myself walking over to him. "Excuse me," I said, feeling awkward. "May I ask what you're drawing?" He looked up at me with a kind smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "The fountain," he said simply, gesturing to the sketchbook on his lap. I glanced at the page. He wasn't just drawing the fountain, he was capturing the life around it, the tourists, the pigeons, even the splash of the water. It was detailed, deliberate, and alive. "Why here?" I asked, gesturing to the chaos around us. His smile widened. "Because Rome whispers," he said. "You just have to stop long enough to listen." I blinked. Rome? Whispering? All I could hear was noise, honking horns, chattering tourists, and the endless splash of the fountain. He must have noticed my confusion, because he chuckled softly. "Sit," he said, motioning to the empty space beside him. "You'll see." Reluctantly, I sat down. At first it was uncomfortable. My mind was racing with thoughts of everything I wasn't doing. My schedule loomed over me like a scolding parent, reminding me that I was wasting precious time. But gradually, something began to shift. I started to notice things I hadn't before. The way the sunlight danced on the water, the laughter of a child chasing a pigeon, the rhythm of a street performer playing a violin in the distance. It wasn't that the noise had disappeared, it was that I had stopped fighting it. Continued sketching, his pencil moving steadily across the page. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his words felt deliberate, like the strokes of his pencil. "Patience," he said after a while, "isn't about waiting, it's about being present while you wait." His words hit me like a splash of cold water. I had spent my whole life rushing from one thing to the next, thinking that patience was just a fancy word for enduring delays. But Marco's version of patience was something else entirely. It was about finding stillness in the chaos, beauty in the... I spent the rest of the day wandering Rome with a new perspective. I lingered over an espresso at a tiny cafe, watching the world go by. I struck up a conversation with a shopkeeper who told me the story behind her handcrafted jewelry. I got lost in the winding alleys and stumbled upon a quiet piazza where a street musician was playing the accordion. For the first time, I wasn't rushing. I wasn't trying to tick off items on a to-do list, I was just present. That night, as I watched the sunset from a quiet hill overlooking the city, Marco's words echoed in my mind. Patience isn't about waiting. It's about being present while you wait. I realized that my frustration with Rome had never been about the city. It was about me, my need to control, to rush, to force life to fit into my schedule. But Rome, with all its chaos and charm, had shown me a different way. And maybe that's the real lesson of patience. It's not about mastering time. It's about letting time master you, just enough to notice the beauty you've been too busy to see. Next week, I'll take you to Marrakesh, where I lost a map but found something far more valuable. Until then, remember, the world is full of whispers. You just have to stop long enough to hear them.